there's a lot of discourse going around Snow White and the 7 BIPOC individuals, and I've been part of that discourse. And a big part of that is where I did my main discourse on that is the Rob and Dan podcast, the most recent one, or you can just watch the individual clip posted yesterday. All right. And I will put that in the description for you. And that is a beautiful plug. The thing is that, you know, my wife and I, we've been noticing it doesn't really seem like these people like the movies they're putting out. I love a good remake because it puts it back, conversation back into the social atmosphere. It keeps the original relevant. But it seems like nowadays they're not making repeats or remakes so that they can, you know, refresh the IP. It seems like they're just making these as, honestly, conservative rage bait. Like, hey guys, like, let's just do something so silly that conservatives will react to it and give us free advertising. That's what it seems like to me. These individuals don't even seem like they actually like the movie that they're talking about. There's this whole like tangent about how it's not going to be about love. And it's like, why? Girls like love. That's a good thing. They stray a lot very far from the source material. Instead of just making the dwarves with more representation, they just made them not dwarves, which just is stupid. Like I say, add more races of, I think the correct term is dwarf or little person, but add more races and genders, get a non-binary dwarf, get one in a wheelchair. I'm not kidding. Get a black one, get a bunch of different dwarves, hire them. That's the proper representation. Like, hey, I think it's problematic that it's a bunch of white dwarves in a hole. Okay, cool. Make them a bunch of different stuff. That makes sense. But instead, they go with like this weird direction where they just phase out jobs for little people. So that makes so much sense. That's so much more inclusive. You know, if you want to, you can watch the full video here. It's a good watch. But anyway, I've been seeing a lot of conservatives perspectives, and we got little Joel. And so I'm curious because I like Joel, both big and little, and I'm looking for a counter perspective. Just to see that maybe we are just overreacting, you know. But like even the Little Mermaid, where they made a black mermaid, like here's the thing, I think that's totally fine. And maybe this is a wrong way I feel, but I feel like they didn't make the Little Mermaid and then decide to use a black person as the actress. It sounds like they made the Little Mermaid to make her black. Does that make sense? Like, I'm all for good actresses should be able, or good actors or actresses or themtresses. I don't know what you'd say. I think that they should take whatever role. If you made Samuel L. Jackson Little Mermaid, he's an incredible actor. But it feels like they're like, what if we did Black Little Mermaid? What? It's like, why? Like, that's not. I like. How does that add to the movie? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You know. Maybe they could have made a Black Little Mermaid, but this one centralized in Atlantis, like Atlantis. That's the joke. But I don't know. Anyway, let's see what we got here. My point I'm trying to say is diversity is not a bad thing, but sometimes it feels like a virtue signal. Let's see what we got, though.
So I recently watched an extremely viral... Hey, everybody. So
Hi.
I recently watched an extremely viral TikTok where a woman discusses Disney princesses in response to this clip of Rachel Zegler talking about how Snow White is going to be badass now.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is...
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
I could literally write a PhD thesis on the pseudo-feminism that is criticizing Disney princesses.
I want to
Interesting.
preface my thoughts here by saying I find that little Rachel Zegler soundbite very annoying. It comes off as pandering and forced to me, and this stuff has always just been a bit embarrassing.
True, I agree with that. I guess your best argument could be that the people wrote the movie with good intentions, and then the actresses are not smart about their interpretations of it.
If the main sales pitch you have for a film is that it will fix the politics of the original, you know, you're not making a movie, you're just giving me an extremely basic social studies lesson.
Well, that's the thing, is that like fixing the politics of that movie doesn't mean that you would have to remove true love from it, right? Maybe make it so she's awake when she gets kissed. I don't know, right? There's a sleeping, like, or you know what I mean? Or something like that, you know? But was that Snow White that problematic? You know? I don't know.
It's a very boring, tired way of advertising a movie. With that said, I disagree with a lot of things about this TikTok and found those disagreements a bit interesting, so let's get into it. We'll start here with her first claim. It's not feminist to judge the decisions of these Disney women.
Criticizing Disney princesses is not feminist.
Okay.
Not every woman is a leader. Not every woman wants to be a leader. Not every woman wants or craves power, and that's okay. It is not anti-feminist to want to fall in love, to want to get married, to want to stay at home, to be soft, to want to be a homemaker. None of these things make you less valuable.
I agree with that. And I think that a lot of the new movies are trying to assert, I don't know, like it just, maybe I'm just wrong about my interpretation. Maybe it is just the way that she expressed herself that bothered me in some capacity. It just seems like it's a completely different movie, and at that point, like, what's the point in even make? And at this point, you should have just made it called Snow White in space or something, and just made it a space opera. You know, to mix it with Star Wars, gave him a lightsaber. Why not just make a new Disney princess that's not this? Then at that point, it just seems so off from the original source material. You know,
as a person or a woman.
Not every woman wants to be a leader. Many want to get married and have families, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's like, sure, that's correct, but it's just a rehash of terrible points we've seen 1,000 times.
I guess.
Fictional characters are not real people. Judging them isn't the same as judging the actions of real women.
Sure, but like stories are supposed to be somewhat of a reflection of our lives. The reason that we started doing stories when we first started making stories is to try to communicate a moral premise and, of course, entertainment value, but through that story. The whole time, people on the left, me included, are saying we need more representation in media. Well, why do we need more representation if they're just stories? Oh, because people identify with these stories, right?
And because of this, it makes sense to point to patterns, ideology. Why do Snow White and Cinderella, the first two Disney princess movies, center so much around a man who will make the protagonist's life better? Why do they center domestic values? Why do they put such an emphasis on beauty? The early movies about boys aren't like that. Neither Pinocchio...
No, there's generally two different ways that we would communicate stuff to men and women. When it comes down to it, the way we communicate stories, usually, or at least historically, to men is it's usually this, like, either a really badass character that just is more badass, or it's the underdog hero who starts with nothing and builds to something. And that speaks to what it is to be a man, the incredible mythology of what it means to be a man, in the way that we've demonstrated it, right? That's the hero's journey. When it comes to women, for the most part, the way that we communicate to women is like, you're already valuable enough, and you're just looking and waiting for somebody to find that value in you. You look at a lot of romantic comedies, you see that. Snow White is one of those things where there's not a whole significant amount of change. And it's interesting. And then you go, well, how much of that is biological? And that biology is expressed through our way of telling the story and what resonates with men versus women, and how much of that is social conditioning. And then that's like a fascinating conversation that you can never come to an absolute basis on. And then it's like, what appeals to women? What appeals to men? How much of it's social? How much is biological? How much is everything? And you get into this like really twisted, like, oh my God, and it gets so interesting. And I think that's why when you look at the female characters that are in the hero's journey roles, and they seem to not make a lot of growth, they seem to already be strong enough and good enough. I see a mixing of what a woman wants in a man's world, right? Women, the way we communicate them through media is like, you're good enough. So you look at like Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel or whichever it is, she's like, you're already good enough. We just need people to see that. And it's a very interesting merging of that dynamic, and that might resonate more with women. And I just think it's a fascinating thing to think about. But the thing is just because social things are shifting doesn't mean that some of those aren't biological. I think that women do like to look for love, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with having a strong female character that also loves love, especially when we're in a time where we're constantly talking about how femininity needs to be promoted more, and yet we're taking away the femininity of characters. Oh, she's not going to be in love. Well, why? Femininity is a very powerful, strong thing that even men should be. We need more feminine men in the sense of men being more loving and emotional and empathetic, and then all of a sudden you're going to make a new age feminist movie that completely changes a character and the entire story from behind it. That's like, oh, she doesn't care about love. Why? That doesn't resonate with people. When, like, that doesn't make any sense to me, so I don't know, it just seems like a little bit of silly goosery. It just seems really silly goosery. What's my favorite character in media? I don't know. I hate women. So I couldn't answer that question.
Nor Dumbo have a romance, and while Bambi does, it's essentially a footnote of the story. None of them advertise the goodness of domestic service at all.
Why does femininity equal love? I think that love and empathy tend to be assigned the value of a feminine trait, because women tend to be more loving and empathetic. So that's how I categorize that feeling.
And we don't hear about how attractive Dumbo is.
Whoa, look at those ears. Ugly. I'm just kidding. But that's not what Dumbo's about, right?
So, yes, I think these movies are patriarchal, that they convey an ideology that places women in domestic roles and places men at the very center of their desires.
Right, but then we got things like Frozen and Tangled that seem to shift those ideas. They made like different characters, new characters, and they contested those historic ideas. And was there some complaining? Sure. But I think that makes sense. You know, you have a historic IP that's about, you know, a princess in love, and, you know, just Prince Charming finds her. And I think that it's just like, why use the name Snow White if you're going to change everything that's fundamental? There's no dwarves anymore. Snow White, I mean, she's still pretty white, let's be real. But it's less like, what's the, you know, she's not going to be in love. She's not going to do this. What's the point of why call it Snow White anymore? You know, I don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's not an honoring. It's like there's no reason for it. It's just silly goosery.
None of this is strange. This isn't a hot take. It's not interesting. These movies were made in 1937 and 1950, respectively. Societies that were obviously more extremely and explicitly patriarchal.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that everything that was taught was bad. It was patriarchal to a toxic degree of non-choice, 1,000%. But that doesn't mean that at the core, some of those things are bad, right? It's not that big of a deal, you know. Like there's a place for a more historic, like you can be a mommy video movie, just like there's good movies about how I love my sister in the Frozen, or you know this strong female character in Tangled, or you know there's different examples. So
than the world is today. Anyway, this brings me to a minor point. The TikToker
hey, that's grooming.
Makes this lengthy argument about people misunderstanding The Little Mermaid.
He criticized Princess.
Ice Spice should star in Brave. I want to see that. Brave's another example, though. Brave's another example of like a very strong, you know, more capable female character. You know, right? What's, you know?
Ariel and completely write her
misunderstanding The Little Mermaid.
He criticized Princess Ariel and completely write her off and say that she's pathetic and has no sense of self because
who says that?
She gave up her voice for the sake of a man,
I've never heard that argument.
Failing to realize that the entire premise of the movie is that he fell in love with the voice that she thought she had to give up because of the evil sea witch.
And while
Is that true? I mean, maybe. She gave up her voice so that she could have legs. But I thought that he fell in love with her even though she couldn't express herself. Is there like a deep-seated message there? What's the message? I mean, I feel like I'm in English class again where we're like overthinking it. I don't know. I don't know if maybe that's true. I don't know. I feel like
I'm not super sold on what she's saying for reasons I may get to one day. It's interesting that this is even part of the conversation. Disney princesses do not represent some kind of ideologically coherent position. The Little Mermaid is from 1991, and as Rachel Zegler emphasizes, Snow White is not. It's tempting to read in some universal feminist critique of these films, but none could possibly apply, right? Moving on, the TikToker makes this point about Cinderella, how the feminist critique writes off her ability to have hope and stay kind.
Which one is Cinderella? Is she the one with the shoe? Let me see. Oh, I wrote Cinderella with an S and it gave me a porn. I think she's the one with the shoe. Okay. I think the point of that one is women have fat feet.
Kind in the face of adversity.
My favorite
we
one.
completely write off Cinderella's incredible capability of having hope and staying kind in the face of years and years.
I never watched the new one.
And years of abuse solely because she fell in love and happened to marry a prince.
Well, I think the point of that one is that she was in a situation where she was being horribly abused, and she did endure it. And then she was found by the prince, and that true love rescued her. You know, and again, here's my thing, is I feel like that probably speaks to a lot of women, especially women that are in abusive situations. Because like, oh, the man will come and save you, right? But I mean, I could see why maybe it would be better to teach that she was able to get it out of it herself. I don't know. I think that story can resonate with some people though in a positive way. I think that can be a positive thing. Because I could see that resonating with some. I think it resonates with a lot of girls. I think a lot of girls are forced to be more active in the state of the home than boys are and have higher expectations. And I don't know if I would call it all abuse, but I think that this story probably speaks to a lot of little girls, especially where they have like a brother or younger siblings in general, and they're the ones that are expected to help cook and clean and, you know, do this, that, and the other thing, and basically to an extent help raise their kids. And I'm not even saying that dynamic is necessarily wrong, but I'm saying I feel like that could resonate with a lot of young girls. They're like, I had to mature too fast. And, you know, you see a lot of TikToks that criticize this where it's like, oh, like it's like when I graduate high school, when I graduate with my master's degree, and like the mom has like a just like a neutral face on, and then it's like when my brother wakes up before 12 in the afternoon and she's like happy, and it's like I feel like that maybe speaks to a lot of people.
But I would just respond, that's a terrible feminist critique if it does exist. Obviously, Cinderella is virtuous and has good things about her. She is, in fact, an exemplar of 1950s womanhood. Kind, gentle, persevering, a good homemaker. And again, none of these traits are bad, but this model of a perfect woman can still be criticized. We might ask, would a male Disney character of this time be expected to be kind and obedient to his abusive family? Would that be a value we expect of the men of early Disney films?
I don't know. Do they have men in early Disney films? Most of the time they just kill dragons. We dragging these nuts.
And the answer is no, obviously not. The talker also makes a point here about how Cinderella isn't waiting for a man.
We say that she was waiting for a prince to come save her from her problems, when in reality,
I don't think she was waiting. I mean, I couldn't misremember, but that's what happened.
There's no real indication of that in the movie whatsoever.
And I find that interesting because, you know, while Cinderella may not be waiting for a man to save her, Snow White, you know, certainly is.
Yeah, sure. But again, I think that's something that resonates with some girls, so like waiting for a man to save them, right? I think that's a fine thing to do. I don't think that the issue is movies like Cinderella or Snow White. I think the issue is that these were the only things that were representation of women at the time, and now we have better representation, so why not have a little bit of everything, right? Some women are waiting for a guy to save them, and that would resonate with them. So it's like, whatever, of course. Some women like to talk to birds. Personally, I don't like birds at my house. If these birds were fucking, I married the right woman, she'd yell at the birds, "Get the fuck out of here, bird!" And they'd run away. Because don't come to me looking for food. Don't come to me looking for food. There you go. All right.
For a man. It's actually the first thing we learn about her, that she's wishing for a man to come. It's
I don't even have to say anything at this point. We already know what's being said there.
Striking, come to think of it, that in this entire video, there is not one word about Snow White and its themes, when that's what the soundbite was about. Does this woman think Snow White actually is patriarchal? And if so, what's even the point of zooming in on Rachel Zegler here? She said nothing wrong. You didn't.
I think that she did. This is the interesting thing, and I understand that everybody upholds the patriarchy, but there's a lot of women criticizing Snow White. That's all I see is women criticizing Snow White on my feed more than anything else. And it's women that generally identify with like feminist shit and like on TikTok, because they don't like the mocking of like, oh, a woman that wants true love, because that resonates with a lot of girls. I mean, you know what I mean? And so they're just like, hey, this is just tone deaf. They just don't get it. And it feels like the movie is silly and it's a pander to women, right? And it's not actual feminism. It's virtue feminism. It's a facade of what feminism is. And feminism is about valuing femininity, and women like love. And to just mock that is like silly. That's all it is.
You didn't say that she said anything wrong. Anyway, the TikTok ends with this.
Because there's plenty of women who criticize this.
Feminist critiques of these movies are just about judging women who want men and love in their lives.
All you're doing is criticizing women for things that men get to do unquestioned and denying them their right to be or fall in love.
And no, I don't think they are.
To be things that men get to do
in their lives.
All you're doing is criticizing women for things that men get to do unquestioned and denying them their right to be or fall in love.
And no, I don't think they are. I don't agree. I don't agree with her. Fucking slayed another TikTok, boys.